The smell hit me first, leather aged to the perfect shade of burgundy, wood polish applied with reverence rather than efficiency, and beneath it all, the faint metallic tang of old money. Real old money. The kind that didn't need to announce itself because it had been whispering the same secrets for generations. I adjusted my grip on the sterling silver tray, feeling the weight of 12 Baccarat crystal glasses filled with Dom Perignon Rose 2008. Each glass cost more than my weekly rent. Each bottle cost more than my mother's monthly medication. The arithmetic of inequality was a language I'd learned to speak fluently during my 6 months at the Pantheon. Aria. Mrs. Blackburn's voice sliced through my concentration like a scalpel. Table 7. The Shaw engagement party. And for God's sake, don't breathe near the glassware. I nodded, my face a practiced mask of professional invisibility. That was the first rule of serving the ultra-wealthy. Be competent enough to anticipate their needs, invisible enough to never disturb their illusions of supremacy. The Pantheon wasn't just a private club. It was a temple where billionaires came to worship themselves, where CEOs and tech moguls and venture capitalists performed elaborate rituals of power over $30 appetizers and $1,000 bottles of wine. The membership fee alone, $250,000 annually, was more than most people earned in 5 years. I was 25 years old, a former art history student who dropped out when my mother's lupus medications began costing more than our combined income could sustain. The Pantheon paid well by service industry standards, which meant I could almost, keep my head above water if I worked doubles 4 nights a week and didn't indulge in luxuries like adequate sleep or a social life. The great room of the Pantheon stretched before me like a cathedral dedicated to capitalism. Mahogany panels climbed 20-foot walls. A chandelier that once hung in a French chateau scattered prismatic light across marble floors. In the corner, a pianist played Chopin with the kind of technical perfection that suggested Juilliard training and crushed dreams. Table 7 occupied the prime position near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. 50 stories below, ordinary people lived ordinary lives, completely unaware that gods walked among them. And at table 7 sat Dalton Shaw. Even among billionaires, Dalton Shaw was different. At 35, he'd built Shaw Technologies from a Stanford dorm room project into a $40 billion empire that dominated artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and predictive analytics. Forbes called him the Oracle of Silicon Valley. Business Insider called him the most dangerous man in tech. His enemies, and he had many, called him ruthless, calculating, and utterly without sentiment. I'd served him perhaps a dozen times over the past 6 months. He never made eye contact, never said please or thank you, never acknowledged my existence except to occasionally shift his water glass 3 millimeters to the left with the precision of someone who believed the universe should align with his preferences. But tonight was special. Tonight was his engagement celebration. I approached table 7 with the tray balanced perfectly, my steps silent on the marble floor. The party consisted of 8 people: Dalton Shaw, his fiancée Imogen Reed, and 6 associates whose net worth collectively exceeded the GDP of small nations. Dalton sat at the head of the table, his posture somehow both relaxed and absolutely controlled. He wore a Tom Ford suit in charcoal gray that probably cost $15,000 and looked like it had been tailored by angels. His face was all sharp angles, cutting cheekbones, a jaw that could have been carved from granite, eyes the color of winter storms. Handsome in the way that predatory birds are handsome, beautiful, dangerous, utterly indifferent to lesser creatures. And beside him, radiant as a Renaissance painting, sat Imogen Reed. If Dalton was winter, Imogen was eternal spring. 32 years old, with honey blonde hair that fell in perfect waves, skin that glowed with the kind of health that came from personal trainers and boutique nutrition plans, and a smile that could melt glaciers. She wore a champagne-colored Valentino gown that probably cost more than my car, if I'd owned a car, and a diamond engagement ring that caught the light like a small, captive star. The media loved her. Tech's humanitarian heart, they called her. The woman who'd tamed the untamable Dalton Shaw. Former model turned philanthropist, she ran the Luminance Foundation, which funded arts education in underprivileged communities. She'd appeared on the cover of Vogue 3 times. She spoke 5 languages. She delivered a TED Talk on compassionate capitalism that had 17 million views. She was perfect. And that, I would soon discover, was exactly the problem. The 2008 rose, I murmured, setting the first glass before Dalton with practiced precision. As requested, Mr. Shaw. He didn't look at me. His attention remained fixed on the man across the table, Jasper Kane, his chief legal officer, a careful man with wire-rimmed glasses and the permanent expression of someone who'd made a career out of anticipating disasters. I moved clockwise around the table, distributing champagne with the mechanical grace of someone who'd performed this ritual 1,000 times. As I reached Imogen's seat, she glanced up with that famous smile, the one that had graced magazine covers and charity galas. "Thank you so much," she said, her voice warm as honey, her hand briefly touching mine in a gesture that was meant to convey humility and connection. "You're wonderful." It was a small thing, that touch. A calculated moment of faux intimacy designed to demonstrate that despite her wealth and beauty and perfect life, she was still fundamentally human, still capable of seeing the help as actual people. I'd seen it before from others like her. The performance of kindness. But as I set her glass down, something caught my eye. Imogen's phone lay face up on the white tablecloth beside her Hermes clutch. The screen was illuminated with a notification, and in the half-second before she noticed and flipped it over, I saw something that made my breath catch. A screenshot, a map, location sharing, and a timestamp. Thursday, 11:47 p.m., V-Cross Industries, HQ. I was a former art history student. I'd spent 3 years learning to analyze compositions, to spot the single wrong brushstroke in a masterpiece forgery, to notice the things that didn't belong. That skill hadn't died when I dropped out. If anything, months of reading the micro-expressions of billionaires had honed it to a razor's edge. V-Cross Industries. Victor Cross, Dalton Shaw's primary competitor and, according to the business press, his most bitter enemy. They'd been locked in a brutal battle over military AI contracts worth billions. Shaw Technologies was winning. Barely. Why would Dalton Shaw's perfect fiancée have location data from Victor Cross's headquarters on her phone? I finished distributing the champagne, my hands steady despite the sudden acceleration of my heartbeat. As I stepped back from the table, I forced myself to catalog what I'd seen with clinical precision. Last Thursday, Dalton had been in Tokyo for a keynote at a tech summit. I knew because the Pantheon had catered a small celebration for his safe return on Friday evening, which meant Thursday night. While Dalton was 13 time zones away, Imogen had been at his competitor's headquarters at nearly midnight. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was a charity event. Maybe it was a perfectly innocent explanation that my cynical, overworked brain was twisting into conspiracy. Or maybe the perfect woman was a perfectly constructed lie. I retreated to the service station, my mind racing. Mrs. Blackburn assigned me to the Shaw table for the duration of the evening, which meant I'd spend the next 3 hours hovering at the periphery, refilling water glasses, clearing plates, witnessing the performance of power. I should have ignored it. I should have recognized that whatever games billionaires played were so far above my pay grade that even observing them was dangerous. I should have focused on my job, on my paycheck, on keeping my head down and my mouth shut. But I kept thinking about my mother. About the way her hands shook when she tried to open her medication bottles. About the medical bills that arrived like clockwork, each one a fresh reminder that in America, health was a luxury and survival was a privilege reserved for those who could afford it. I thought about power. About the people who had it and the people who didn't. About the way the wealthy played their games with other people's livelihoods as collateral damage. And I thought about something my art history professor had once said. The truth is always visible if you know how to look. Even the most skilled forger leaves fingerprints. The dinner progressed with choreographed precision. First course, Kumamoto oysters with champagne mignonette and caviar. Second course, butter-poached lobster with truffle risotto. Third course, Wagyu beef so tender it practically dissolved on the tongue, accompanied by wine that cost $400 per bottle. I moved through the service like a ghost, present but unnoticed, my professional smile fixed in place while my mind cataloged every detail. Imogen was a master performer. She laughed at jokes with genuine delight. She touched Dalton's arm with casual affection. She asked thoughtful questions about quantum computing and listened with apparent fascination to discussions about market disruption and technological paradigm shifts. She was attentive without being clingy, intelligent without being threatening, beautiful without being vain. But I watched her the way I'd once watched paintings in museums, looking for the inconsistencies beneath the surface. And I found them. Small things. Microscopic things. The way her smile never quite reached her eyes when Dalton discussed his company's future projects. The barely perceptible tension in her shoulders when someone mentioned the military AI contract. The fraction of a second delay before she responded to mentions of Project Chimera, Shaw Technologies' most classified development initiative. Most people wouldn't have noticed. But I'd spent 3 years learning to spot the difference between genuine Renaissance paintings and skilled copies. I knew how to see what didn't belong. When I refilled her wine glass, I positioned myself to get another glimpse at her phone. She'd placed it face down, but when a text notification made it vibrate, she flipped it over automatically. The sender name, V. The message preview. Thursday's data confirmed invaluable. Friday meeting. She silenced the phone immediately, her expression never changing, that perfect smile still in place. But I saw her thumb move, deleting the notification with practiced ease. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't coincidence. Dalton Shaw's perfect fiancé was communicating with someone identified only as V, possibly Victor Cross, about data that she'd accessed last Thursday. Data that Victor Cross found invaluable. The word that echoed in my mind was simple, devastating: espionage. I retreated to the service station, my hands shaking slightly as I arranged dessert plates. Mrs. Blackburn noticed immediately. "Arya, you're trembling. Are you ill?" "No, ma'am. Just tired." Her eyes narrowed. "We don't pay you to be tired. We pay you to be invisible and competent. If you can't manage both, there are 50 people who'd take your position tomorrow." I nodded, forcing my hands steady. "Yes, ma'am. It won't happen again." But as I returned to table 7 with the dessert service, a deconstructed apple tart with Calvados ice cream, I made a decision that would change everything. I couldn't ignore what I'd seen. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe there was an innocent explanation. But if I was right, if Imogen Reed was systematically betraying Dalton Shaw to his primary competitor, then someone needed to know. The question was, how did someone like me warn someone like Dalton Shaw? I couldn't send an email. His assistant probably screened thousands daily. I couldn't call. I didn't have his number, and even if I did, what would I say? "Hello, Mr. Shaw. I'm the invisible server you've never acknowledged, and I think your supermodel fiancé is a corporate spy?" No. It had to be subtle, immediate, undeniable. As I cleared the dessert plates, a plan formed. Dangerous, probably stupid, but the only option I could see. Dalton had excused himself to take a call, stepping away from the table. His water glass sat precisely where he'd left it, 3 millimeters from the edge of the tablecloth, aligned with geometric perfection. I had perhaps 90 seconds. From my apron pocket, I pulled out my order pad, the small leather notebook every server at the Pantheon carried. I tore out a single page, my hand surprisingly steady despite the adrenaline flooding my system. I wrote quickly, my handwriting compressed and urgent. "Check her location sharing history. Thursday nights. Specifically V-Cross Industries HQ. Your fiancé has secrets." I folded the paper twice, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. This was insane. This was career suicide. If I was wrong, I'd be fired and blacklisted from every high-end establishment in the city. If I was right, but Dalton didn't believe me, same outcome. But if I was right, and he did believe me, I approached the table under the pretense of refilling water glasses. Imogen was engaged in conversation with Jasper Kane about the Luminance Foundation's upcoming gala. The others were debating cryptocurrency regulation. I filled Dalton's water glass, my movements practiced and professional. And then, with the kind of sleight of hand I'd learned from years of discreet service, I slipped the folded note beneath the base of his glass. It took 3 seconds. No one noticed. I stepped back, my professional mask firmly in place, even as my pulse thundered in my ears. Dalton returned 2 minutes later, his phone call concluded. He sat down with that characteristic precision, his eyes scanning the table automatically. He reached for his water glass and stopped. His fingers hovered over the note for perhaps half a second, barely long enough to register as hesitation. Then, with movements so smooth they seemed choreographed, he palmed the paper, unfolded it beneath the table, and read it in what couldn't have been more than 3 seconds. I was stationed at the service area, watching through my peripheral vision, my hands busy with meaningless tasks. Dalton's expression didn't change. Not a flicker, not a twitch. He was a man who'd built an empire by never revealing his thoughts, by playing poker with billion-dollar stakes and never showing his hand. But I saw his jaw tighten. Just barely. Just enough. He folded the note with one hand, slipped it into his jacket pocket, and picked up his water glass as though nothing had happened. Then his eyes found mine across the room. It was the first time in 6 months that Dalton Shaw had truly looked at me. Not through me. Not past me. At me. His eyes were the color of glacial ice, and they were absolutely terrifying. I felt the weight of that gaze like a physical thing. It lasted perhaps 2 seconds. An eternity. Then he looked away, his attention returning to his table, to his fiancée, to the celebration of their upcoming marriage. But I knew I'd been seen. Truly, completely seen. And I had no idea if I'd just saved his empire or signed my own death warrant. The rest of the dinner service passed in a blur of controlled terror. I performed my duties with mechanical precision, refilling glasses, clearing plates, maintaining the invisible servant routine while my mind replayed those 2 seconds of eye contact over and over. What had I been thinking? Dalton Shaw didn't become a billionaire by trusting random accusations from service staff. For all he knew, I was the plant. I could be working for Victor Cross, trying to destabilize his relationship with false accusations. I could be a tabloid journalist, a blackmailer, a corporate saboteur. Or I could be exactly what I appeared to be, a broke former art student with decent observational skills and catastrophically poor judgment. The engagement party concluded at 11:30. Dalton and Imogen departed first, her hand resting lightly on his arm, both of them the picture of sophisticated contentment. If Dalton had been rattled by my note, he showed no sign. Imogen was radiant, her perfect smile never wavering. As they walked toward the exit, I heard her laugh at something he murmured, the sound musical and genuine seeming. My stomach twisted. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'd seen patterns where none existed. Maybe I'd just destroyed my career over paranoid speculation. The other guests dispersed gradually. By midnight, the Pantheon had emptied, leaving only staff to restore the room to its pristine state. Aria. Mrs. Blackburn's voice cut through the silence as I was collecting the last of the wine glasses from table 7. Yes, ma'am. Mr. Shaw's office called. They've requested that you be removed from his preferred service rotation. The words hit like a physical blow. My hands froze on the baccarat crystal. Did I do something wrong? Mrs. Blackburn's expression was professionally neutral, but I caught the faint satisfaction in her eyes. She'd never liked me. I was too educated, too observant, too obviously out of place among the usual service staff who'd learned early to accept their position without question. They didn't specify, but when Dalton Shaw makes a request, we comply. You'll be reassigned to secondary rooms and daytime service. Your evening schedule will be reduced accordingly. Translation: my income had just been cut by 40%. The evening shifts at Table 7 and other premium positions were where the real money was, both in hourly wages and tips that could run to 4 figures for a single night. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Understood. You're dismissed for the evening. I changed out of my uniform in the staff locker room, my hands shaking as I buttoned my jeans. My reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger, pale, exhausted, 25 years old, but feeling ancient. The late-night subway ride home was a blur. I lived in a studio apartment in a neighborhood that real estate agents euphemistically called emerging. Translation: marginally safer than a war zone, with rent low enough that people like me could technically afford it. I unlocked 3 deadbolts and stepped into my 400-square-foot kingdom. A futon that doubled as bed and couch. A kitchenette the size of a closet. A bathroom where you could sit on the toilet, brush your teeth, and shower simultaneously if you were feeling efficient. On my desk, a card table from Goodwill, sat a framed photo of my mother and me from 5 years ago, before the lupus diagnosis, before the medical bills, before everything fell apart. We were smiling, genuinely happy, blissfully unaware of what was coming. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. How was work, sweetheart? Don't stay up too late. Love you. I typed back. Work was fine. Love you too. Take your meds. The lie tasted bitter. Work wasn't fine. I'd just torpedoed my income trying to warn a billionaire that his perfect fiancée might be betraying him. I'd violated every rule of professional discretion. I'd inserted myself into affairs so far above my station that I couldn't even see the stratosphere from here. And for what? Dalton Shaw had responded by having me removed from his service rotation, which meant either he thought I was crazy, or he thought I was dangerous, or, worst possibility, he already knew about Imogen and simply didn't care. I fell asleep on my futon still wearing my jeans, too exhausted for proper sleep hygiene, too defeated to bother. I woke to my phone ringing at 7 a.m. An unknown number. Hello? Aria Fields. A crisp, professional female voice. Yes. This is Victoria Chun from Shaw Technologies Legal Department. We need you to come to our offices this morning at 10 a.m. The address is... Wait, what? What? I'm not at liberty to discuss it over the phone. 10 a.m. Don't be late. She hung up. I stared at my phone, my heart racing. Shaw Technologies wanted to see me. Dalton Shaw's legal department wanted to see me. This was either very good or catastrophically bad. I showered, dressed in the only professional outfit I owned, a navy blazer and slacks I'd bought for art history presentations in college, and took the subway to the financial district. Shaw Technologies occupied floors 40 through 60 of the Obsidian Tower, a glass and steel monolith that looked like it had been designed to intimidate. The lobby was all black marble and brushed chrome, with a reception desk that looked like a spacecraft's bridge. Aria Fields, I told the receptionist. I have an appointment with legal at 10. She checked her computer, her perfectly manicured fingers flying across the keyboard. 55th floor. Elevators to your right. The elevator was glass-walled, offering a vertiginous view of the city falling away beneath me. I watched the numbers climb, 45, 46, 47, each floor representing wealth and power beyond my comprehension. Floor 55 was corporate law personified. Everything was gray. Gray walls, gray carpet, gray furniture arranged in geometrically perfect groupings. Even the receptionist wore gray. Miss Fields? Conference room 3. Through there. The conference room was dominated by a table that could seat 20. At the head sat Jasper Kane, Dalton's chief legal officer, the careful man with wire-rimmed glasses. He stood as I entered. Miss Fields. Thank you for coming. Please sit. I sat, my hands folded in my lap, my heart hammering. Jasper opened a leather portfolio and slid a document across the table. We need you to sign this. It was a non-disclosure agreement. 10 pages of dense legal prose that boiled down to: if you ever discuss anything related to Dalton Shaw, Shaw Technologies, or anyone associated with either, we will destroy you legally, financially, and professionally. I don't understand, I said, though I was beginning to. It's quite simple. You will sign this NDA, which includes a non-disparagement clause, a confidentiality agreement, and an acknowledgement that you have no legal claim against Shaw Technologies or any associated entities. In exchange, you will receive 2 months severance pay and a neutral reference for future employment. Severance? I don't work for Shaw Technologies. No, but as of last night, you no longer work for the Pantheon either. The words took a moment to penetrate. What? Mr. Shaw contacted Pantheon management this morning. You've been terminated. Effective immediately. The room tilted. He got me fired? He requested your removal from his service rotation. The Pantheon made the decision to terminate your employment. Completely their discretion. It was a lie. A legal fiction. Dalton Shaw had made a call, and the Pantheon had complied. Because when billionaires make requests, they're actually commands. I tried to warn him about Imogen, and he'd responded by destroying my livelihood. Why? The word came out hoarse. Jasper's expression remained professionally neutral. I'm not at liberty to discuss Mr. Shaw's reasoning. Will you sign the NDA? I looked at the document. 2 months severance would buy me time to find another job. Maybe. If I was lucky. If I could get a reference. But something in me rebelled. Some stupid, self-destructive impulse that had made me write that note in the first place. What if I don't sign? Then you receive nothing. No severance. No reference. And Mr. Shaw's legal team will ensure that your accusations, whatever they were, are thoroughly investigated. Which means depositions, interrogations, and quite possibly legal action if we determine you've attempted to defame or blackmail Mr. Shaw. It was a threat wrapped in legal language. Sign this, shut up, go away, or we'll bury you. I should have signed it. Any rational person would have signed it. Instead, I stood up. I don't think I will. Jasper's eyebrows rose fractionally. Miss Fields, I strongly advise. I tried to help him. My voice was shaking now, anger and humiliation and exhaustion all bleeding together. I saw something suspicious and I tried to warn him. And he responds by having me fired and threatening me with legal action. Tell Mr. Shaw he can keep his severance. And he can deal with whatever Imogen Reed is actually doing on his own. I walked out before Jasper could respond, my hands trembling, my vision blurred with tears I refused to shed until I was out of the building. I made it to the street before my phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. What? Ms. Fields. A different voice. Male. Deep. Absolutely calm. This is Dalton Shaw. I froze on the sidewalk, pedestrians flowing around me like water around a stone. I don't accept calls from people who get me fired, I managed. I didn't get you fired. I arranged for you to be fired. There's a difference. Oh well, that makes it so much better. Meet me at Bryant Park in 1 hour. The northwest corner, near the fountain. Come alone. Why the hell would I? Because I'm about to offer you a job. And because if you refuse, Imogen will probably have you killed within the week. He hung up. I stood there on the street, my phone pressed to my ear, trying to process what had just happened. Had Dalton Shaw just said someone might try to kill me? And had he just offered me a job? I checked the time. 58 minutes until the meeting. I started walking toward Bryant Park, because apparently I decided that self-preservation was optional. Bryant Park at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday was populated by tourists, office workers on early lunch breaks, and a handful of chess hustlers setting up their boards. I found the northwest corner near the fountain and sat on a bench, my heart still racing from Dalton Shaw's casually terrifying phone call. Imogen will probably have you killed within the week. Who said things like that? And more importantly, who said things like that when they were serious? I'd been waiting maybe 5 minutes when a sleek black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. The back door opened, and Dalton Shaw stepped out. He looked different in daylight, somehow more real and more intimidating simultaneously. He wore a charcoal suit, different from last night's, but equally expensive, and moved with the kind of controlled precision that suggested either military training or obsessive self-discipline. Probably both. He sat down beside me on the bench, maintaining exactly 2 feet of distance. For a long moment, he didn't speak, just watched the fountain with those winter storm eyes. You didn't sign the NDA, he said finally. No. Why not? Because I don't respond well to threats. It wasn't a threat. It was a test. I turned to look at him. A test. I needed to know if you could be bought. If 2 months' salary and a neutral reference would be sufficient to ensure your silence. He paused. You failed the test. Which means you passed. My head was starting to hurt. I'm sorry, what? Everyone can be bought, Miss Fields. The only variable is price. Some people sell out for 2 months' salary. Some require 2 million. But everyone has a price. He looked at me directly for the first time. Except, apparently you. I'm not some noble martyr. I just don't like being manipulated. Good. Because what I'm about to propose requires someone who can't be manipulated. Someone who operates outside the usual power structures. Someone who has nothing to lose and everything to prove. He pulled out a phone, not his regular one, I noticed, but a separate device, and showed me a photograph. It showed Imogen entering a building I recognized, V-Cross Industries headquarters. This was taken last Thursday at 11:45 p.m., Dalton said. While I was in Tokyo. She told me she was having dinner with her sister in Connecticut. You've been tracking her. I've been monitoring location-sharing data since your note. You were right. She's been meeting with Victor Cross approximately twice a week for the past 3 months. Always when I'm traveling. Always at locations she later lies about. So she is a corporate spy. Almost certainly, though proving it is complicated. Imogen has legitimate access to many areas of Shaw Technologies through her position as my fiancé. She attends board meetings, charity events, investor conferences. If she's passing information to Cross, she's doing it carefully enough that I can't move against her without proof. Why not just end the engagement? Because I need to know what she's given him. What data has been compromised? What projects have been exposed? And most importantly, I need to know if this is simple corporate espionage or something larger. He pocketed the phone and turned to face me fully. You spotted her in one glance, Miss Fields. One observation that my security team, my investigators, my entire staff missed. You saw the flaw in the perfect woman. I studied art history. Spotting forgeries was basically my major. Exactly. Which is why I'm offering you a position. What kind of position? Private assistant. You'll live in a company apartment. You'll attend events, dinners, meetings. You'll observe Imogen, her associates, her contacts. You'll be my eyes in places where I can't look, my ears in conversations I can't hear. You'll gather evidence. You want me to spy on your fiancé. I want you to find the truth, whatever it is. And if I refuse, then I'll find another way. But you won't last long. You saw something you shouldn't have. You reported it. Imogen is smart enough to have digital surveillance on anyone who might have noticed. She's probably already identified you as a threat. That's insane. I'm nobody. You're the nobody who saw through her, which makes you very dangerous to whatever operation she's running. He stood, straightening his cuffs with precise movements. The job pays $200,000 per year, plus housing, medical insurance, and a signing bonus sufficient to cover any outstanding debts. Your mother's medical bills, for instance. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. How do you know about? I know everything about you, Miss Fields. Former art history student, Columbia University. Dropped out junior year when your mother was diagnosed with systemic lupus erythematosus. Current medication costs approximately $4,500 monthly. You work 60-hour weeks at the Pantheon to keep her insured and medicated. You live in a studio apartment in Bushwick that you can barely afford. You haven't bought new clothes in 8 months. You eat ramen 4 nights a week. The casual recitation of my life's failures made my cheeks burn. You investigated me. Of course. Would you trust a random accusation without verification? He pulled out a business card, heavy stock, minimalist design, and held it out. This has a private number. Call it within 24 hours if you accept. Don't call if you refuse. Either way, I'll have security watching you for the next few weeks. Just in case. I took the card automatically. In case of what? In case Imogen decides that eliminating you is simpler than discrediting you. He started toward his car, then paused. One more thing, Miss Fields. If you accept this position, you need to understand, I don't do sentiment. I don't do rescue missions. This is a transaction. I'm buying your skills and your discretion. Not your loyalty, not your friendship, and certainly not your judgment of my personal choices. Are we clear? Crystal. Good. He got into the Mercedes and was gone, leaving me sitting on a park bench with a business card that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. $200,000. My mother's medical bills covered. A chance to actually make a difference instead of just serving champagne to people who wouldn't remember my name. But also, corporate espionage, potential danger, and working for a man who just casually suggested his fiancée might have me killed. I sat there for 20 minutes, watching tourists take selfies in front of the fountain, trying to figure out if I was brave or just catastrophically stupid. Then I pulled out my phone and dialed the number on the card. Dalton Shaw answered on the first ring. Ms. Fields. I have conditions. Of course you do. First, I want everything in writing. Contract, salary, medical coverage, all of it. No handshake deals. Agreed. Second, if I find evidence that Imogen is involved in something illegal, you turn it over to authorities. No private settlements. No sweeping it under the rug. A pause. That's not how this world works, Ms. Fields. Then make it work. Those are my terms. Another pause, longer this time. Then, agreed. Provided the evidence is definitive and doesn't compromise national security or proprietary technology. Third, when this is over, however it ends, I want a real position. Not charity, not hush money. A legitimate job with Shaw Technologies or an equivalent company. I want a career, not a payoff. Ambitious. I'm risking my life. I should get more than money. I heard something that might have been a laugh. Or maybe just a sharp exhale. You're either very brave or very foolish, Ms. Fields. Probably both. Report to the legal department tomorrow morning at 9. Your contract will be ready. Welcome to the game. He hung up. I sat there in Bryant Park, my phone still pressed to my ear, and wondered what the hell I'd just agreed to. Above me, the sky was cloudless and blue. The fountain sparkled in the sunlight. Tourists laughed and took photos and lived their normal lives. And I, Aria Fields, former art student, fired waitress, nobody from nowhere, had just agreed to infiltrate a corporate espionage ring run by one of the most beautiful women in America. This was either going to be the best decision of my life or my last one. The Shaw Technologies legal department was less intimidating the second time, though that might have been because I'd spent the previous evening having a mild panic attack and researching exactly how many ways this could go catastrophically wrong. Jasper Kane was waiting in the same conference room, but this time he actually smiled when I entered. It wasn't a warm smile. Legal officers didn't do warm, but it was acknowledgement that I'd been upgraded from problem to eliminate to asset to manage. Ms. Fields, please sit. He slid a contract across the table. Not the NDA from yesterday, but a thick document bound in Shaw Technologies blue. Your employment agreement. I suggest you read it carefully. I did. All 47 pages. The salary was as promised, $200,000 annually, paid bi-weekly. Housing allowance, covered completely, with relocation to a company apartment in Tribeca. Medical insurance, platinum-level coverage extending to immediate family members. Signing bonus, $100,000, available immediately. The job description was vague to the point of meaninglessness. Private assistant to the CEO, Special Projects Division. My actual responsibilities were outlined in an addendum that basically boiled down to: do whatever Dalton Shaw tells you to do, document everything, and don't get caught. There was also a termination clause that made my blood run cold. Either party could end the employment immediately, but if I violated confidentiality, I'd owe Shaw Technologies $10 million in damages. That's insane, I said, looking up at Jasper. I don't have $10 million, which is excellent motivation not to violate confidentiality. He pushed his glasses up. Mr. Shaw is very serious about discretion, Miss Fields. This position requires absolute trust, or absolute terror. Often the same thing in this industry. I signed a contract, my hand surprisingly steady. As I finished the last page, Jasper produced another document. This is your cover story. You're now officially Aria Fields, private executive assistant, hired through a headhunting firm to help Mr. Shaw manage his increasingly complex personal schedule. You have an MBA from NYU, we've arranged the records, and you specialized in operations management. Your previous employment was with a boutique consulting firm that dissolved last year. All verifiable, all legitimate seeming if anyone checks. You fabricated my entire professional history. We enhanced it. Your Columbia education is real. We simply redirected your degree and added credentials. He slid over a third document. This is your operational briefing. Your primary objective is to observe, Imogen read, and document any suspicious behavior, unauthorized access to Shaw Technologies facilities or data, or contact with individuals connected to V-Cross Industries. Secondary objective: identify any other potential security breaches within Mr. Shaw's personal or professional circles. You want me to spy on everyone he knows. We want you to protect Shaw Technologies' interests. If that requires observing Mr. Shaw's associates, so be it. He handed me a phone, sleek, expensive, completely unfamiliar. This is your work device. Encrypted, preloaded with contacts, scheduling software, and secure communication protocols. Anything sensitive goes through this phone only. Your personal phone should be considered compromised. Compromised by who? By anyone with resources and motivation, which, given Mr. Shaw's position, includes approximately half the tech industry, several foreign governments, and at least a dozen corporate competitors. The casual way he said it made my stomach drop. You're saying people might actually try to harm me. We're saying you should be aware of risk levels. Jasper stood, clearly considering the meeting concluded. Your apartment is ready. Address and keys are in your welcome packet. Mr. Shaw expects you at his residence tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. for dinner and briefing. Dress code is business formal. His residence? Not the office. Imogen will be present. This is your introduction to your cover role. You'll be meeting her officially as Mr. Shaw's new assistant. Try not to look like you think she's a corporate spy. That's going to be challenging. Then challenge yourself. You're being paid extremely well for your performance skills. I left with the contract, the briefing, the phone, and a growing sense that I'd stepped into a reality where normal rules no longer applied. The apartment was on the 32nd floor of a Tribeca high-rise. One bedroom, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson River, a kitchen with appliances I didn't know how to operate, and a bathroom larger than my previous entire apartment. The rent on this place probably exceeded my annual salary at the Pantheon. I spent the afternoon moving my meager possessions from Bushwick, which took exactly one Uber trip, and then sat on my new sofa, which was worth more than everything I owned combined, and called my mother. Sweetheart, How are you? I'm good, Mom. Really good. Actually, I have news. I got a new job. Oh, Arya, that's wonderful. Doing what? I'd rehearsed this. Executive assistant position. Tech industry. The pay it's really good, Mom. Really good. A pause. How good? Good enough that I can cover your medications. All of them. And your insurance premiums. You don't have to worry about the bills anymore. I heard her breath catch. Arya, you don't have to. Mom, please. Let me do this. You've been fighting this alone for too long. Let me help. She was crying now. I could hear it. What did I do to deserve such an incredible daughter? You raised her well, I said, my own voice thick. I love you, Mom. I'll call you tomorrow, okay? After we hung up, I sat in my expensive apartment overlooking the river and let myself feel something I hadn't felt in years, hope. Maybe this would work. Maybe I'd gather the evidence against Imogen, help Dalton Shaw protect his company, and build a real career in the process. Maybe I'd finally have a chance to be more than just a survivor. Or maybe I'd end up dead in the Hudson River with a corporate espionage scandal attached to my name. Either way, I'd made my choice. Dalton Shaw's residence was a penthouse in the West Village that occupied the entire top floor of a pre-war building. I arrived at 6:57 p.m., early enough to show punctuality, not so early as to seem desperate, and was met at a private elevator by a man who looked like he'd retired from the Secret Service. Miss Fields. ID, please. I showed him my new Shaw Technologies badge. He scanned it with a device that probably cost more than a car, then nodded. 32nd floor. Mr. Shaw is expecting you. The elevator was lined with mirrors, which gave me 30 seconds to second-guess every aspect of my appearance. I'd worn a charcoal shift dress, the most expensive thing I now owned, purchased this afternoon with my signing bonus, and minimal jewelry. Professional, elegant, forgettable. The elevator opened directly into Dalton's penthouse. Calling it an apartment was like calling the Pacific Ocean a puddle. The space was a study in minimalist perfection, floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Manhattan, furniture in shades of gray and white, art that was probably worth millions displayed with museum-quality lighting. Everything was precisely placed, geometrically aligned, completely controlled. It looked exactly like I'd expected Dalton Shaw's home to look. Ms. Fields. Dalton emerged from what I assumed was a study, dressed more casually than I'd ever seen him, slacks and a dress shirt, no tie, sleeves rolled to his elbows. Somehow this made him more intimidating, not less. You're early. I believe in punctuality. Good. We have about 90 seconds before Imogen arrives. Quick briefing. You were hired through Kensington Executive Search. You impressed during your interview with my chief of staff, who has been briefed and will corroborate the story. You start officially on Monday, but I wanted to introduce you tonight socially before throwing you into the operational deep end. Any questions? How should I act around her? Professional, polite, slightly intimidated. You're meeting a famous philanthropist and model, after all. Don't be too friendly. It would seem suspicious. Don't be cold. It would seem hostile. Just be competent and forgettable. I've had practice being forgettable. Something flickered in his eyes that might have been amusement. Yes, I've read your file. You're very good at occupying space without being noticed. Useful skill. The elevator chimed. Showtime, Dalton murmured, his entire demeanor shifting subtly. The cold CEO became something warmer, more approachable. The mask he wore for Imogen. She stepped out of the elevator like she was walking onto a runway. Flowing silk dress in emerald green, honey blonde hair in perfect waves, that luminous smile that could melt glaciers. Darling. She crossed to Dalton and kissed him with the kind of casual affection that looked completely genuine. Sorry I'm late. The foundation board meeting ran long. Imogen, this is Arya Fields, my new executive assistant. She turned that megawatt smile on me, and I felt the full force of her charisma. This close, I could see why she'd been on magazine covers. She was luminous, magnetic, completely captivating. She was also, I reminded myself, probably a corporate spy. Arya, it's wonderful to meet you. Dalton mentioned he'd finally found someone competent enough to manage his impossible schedule. She extended her hand, perfectly manicured, diamond ring catching the light. Welcome to the team. I shook her hand, fighting the surreal sensation of touching someone I suspected of betraying the man she was about to marry. Thank you, Ms. Reed. It's an honor. Please, call me Imogen. We'll be seeing a lot of each other, I'm sure. Dalton's work-life balance is, well, there isn't one. You'll have your work cut out for you. I'm up for the challenge. We moved to the dining area, a table that could seat 12, but was set for 3. Dinner was prepared by Dalton's private chef. Seared duck breast, roasted vegetables, a wine I was absolutely certain cost more per bottle than my previous monthly rent. The conversation was carefully choreographed. Imogen asked about my background. I delivered the rehearsed MBA story. I asked about her foundation. She lit up, discussing arts education with genuine passion that almost made me forget she was lying about everything else. Dalton played his part perfectly. The attentive fiancé, occasionally touching Imogen's hand, asking about her day, discussing wedding plans with the kind of engaged interest that seemed completely authentic. I watched them interact and felt increasingly disoriented. If I didn't know better, I'd think they were genuinely in love. Imogen looked at Dalton with what appeared to be authentic affection. She laughed at his dry humor. She remembered small details about his preferences. Either she was the world's greatest actress, or what? Maybe I was wrong. Maybe that location data had an innocent explanation. Maybe I'd seen patterns that didn't exist and convinced Dalton Shaw to hire me based on paranoid speculation. Arya, Imogen's voice pulled me from my thoughts. Dalton said you studied at Columbia. Did you enjoy the arts program there? I blinked, recalibrating. She was testing me, gently probing the cover story. Very much. The faculty was exceptional, and access to New York's museums was invaluable for research. What was your thesis focus? This was dangerous territory. I hadn't actually completed a thesis, but the fabricated MBA story included a capstone project. Operational efficiency in nonprofit organizations. Specifically, how arts foundations could optimize donor engagement through data analytics. It was corporate speak. Meaningless. But it sounded plausible. Imogen's eyes lit up. That's fascinating. You should come to one of our Luminance Foundation board meetings. We're always looking for ways to improve our donor relations. I'd be honored. Dalton interjected smoothly. Once Aria's settled into the role, I'm monopolizing enough of her time already. The conversation shifted to wedding plans. They were planning a ceremony for June, 6 months away. Imogen wanted something elegant but understated. Dalton wanted whatever Imogen wanted. They discussed venues, guest lists, whether to do a destination wedding or something local. I sat there, eating duck that probably cost $100 per plate, listening to 2 people plan a wedding that would almost certainly never happen, and wondered what the hell I was doing. After dinner, Dalton walked me to the elevator while Imogen took a phone call in the study. Well, he asked quietly. She's either innocent or exceptionally good. She's exceptionally good. Don't let the performance fool you. How can you stand it? Being engaged to someone you think is betraying you. His expression went cold. I stand it because I need evidence. Suspicion isn't proof. Observation isn't documentation. Until I have something concrete. She remains my fiancée, and I remain committed to discovering the truth. He handed me a slim folder. This contains Imogen's schedule for the next 2 weeks. Events she's attending, meetings she's having, places she'll be. I need you at as many of these as possible. Observe, document, report. Nothing more. What if she catches me? Then your cover story is that you're learning to anticipate my needs by understanding my fiancé's schedule. It's plausible. The elevator arrived. One more thing, Miss Fields. Don't sympathize with her. Don't let her charisma convince you I'm wrong. I've built a $40 billion empire by reading people. I'm not wrong about Imogen. And if you are, then I'll have paid you $200,000 to be paranoid. I can afford it. The elevator doors closed, and I descended back to reality, or whatever passed for reality in this strange new world I'd entered. I spent the ride home reviewing Imogen's schedule. Charity gala on Thursday. Board meeting on Friday. Private dinner with associates on Saturday. No details about who or where. That last one triggered my art history instincts. The vague appointment. The lack of specifics. It was like a painting that looked perfect except for one detail that didn't quite align. I made a note to follow up on Saturday's dinner. And try not to think about what Dalton had said. Don't let her charisma convince you I'm wrong. Because the terrifying truth was, Imogen Reed was incredibly convincing. And I was starting to wonder if Dalton Shaw's paranoia had infected me, or if I'd genuinely seen something real that night at the Pantheon. My first week as Dalton Shaw's executive assistant was a masterclass in controlled chaos. I coordinated conference calls with Tokyo, scheduled meetings with venture capital firms, managed a calendar that would make most people weep, and maintained the fiction that this was my actual job. My real job happened in the margins. Thursday evening, I attended the Riverside Charity Gala with Dalton and Imogen. My role was to hover in the background, managing logistics, ensuring Dalton had water when needed, subtly facilitating his interactions with key donors. My actual role was to watch Imogen. She was in her element at these events. She worked the room like a professional, remembering names, asking thoughtful questions, making everyone feel like they were the most important person in the room. I watched her charm a tech CEO's wife, console a retired senator about his recent health scare, and convince a hedge fund manager to double his foundation contribution, all while looking effortlessly beautiful in a crimson gown that probably cost more than a semester at Columbia. But I also watched her slip away from the main ballroom twice. The first time, she claimed she needed to take a call about an urgent foundation matter. The second time, she said she was going to the restroom. Both times, she was gone for exactly 11 minutes. I couldn't follow her, too obvious. But I noted the timing, the pattern, the way she checked her phone immediately upon returning. Friday's board meeting was even more revealing. Imogen attended in her capacity as Dalton's fiancée, sitting in on a presentation about Shaw Technologies' upcoming military AI contract, the one where they were competing directly against Victor Cross's company. The presentation covered Project Chimera, a classified predictive analytics system designed for battlefield application. Dalton presented it to the board, discussing capabilities, timelines, and competitive advantages. I watched Imogen take notes on her tablet. Diligent, engaged, completely appropriate for someone who took interest in her fiancé's work. Except I noticed she photographed 3 specific slides: the technical architecture diagram, the timeline for beta testing, and the list of government agencies involved in evaluation. She was subtle about it. A casual tap that could have been note-taking. But I've been watching for exactly this kind of behavior. After the meeting, I compiled my observations in a secure memo to Dalton. Subject photographed slides 7, 12, and 18 during Project Chimera presentation. Photographs captured using tablet's integrated camera, likely synced to cloud storage. 2 unexplained absences during Thursday gala, each lasting 11 minutes. Phone activity immediately following both absences suggests communication with outside party. Recommend monitoring her cloud accounts and phone data. Dalton's response came within minutes. Continue observation. Document everything. Good work. Saturday was the private dinner, the vague appointment on Imogen's calendar. I'd spent 2 days trying to figure out where it was happening. Dalton's security team had finally traced it to Lou Bernardine, one of New York's most exclusive restaurants. I couldn't attend directly, too risky, but I positioned myself at a coffee shop across the street with a clear view of the entrance. Imogen arrived at 7 p.m. in an Uber, wearing understated elegance, black dress, minimal jewelry, sunglasses, even though it was evening. She was trying not to be recognized. 10 minutes later, a man joined her. Not Victor Cross. I'd studied his photo. This was someone else. 50s, distinguished, expensive suit. They greeted each other with professional familiarity, not romantic intimacy. I photographed them through the window, using the telephoto feature on my work phone. Not perfect quality, but sufficient for facial recognition. I sent the images to Dalton with a note. Unknown male, approximately 55 to 60, met subject at 7:10 p.m. Appeared familiar with each other. Recommend identification. His response took longer this time, about 30 minutes. When it came, it was a single word, interesting, followed by, subject is Marcus Verne, Victor Cross's head of corporate intelligence. My hands started shaking. This was it. This was actual proof. Imogen wasn't just meeting with V. Cross Industries employees by coincidence. She was meeting with the head of their espionage division. I photographed them again as they left the restaurant 90 minutes later. They didn't touch, didn't embrace, maintained careful distance. But the familiarity was obvious to anyone watching. Sunday, I compiled a comprehensive report. The photograph slides, the unexplained absences, the dinner with Marcus Verne. Evidence was accumulating. Not enough for legal action yet, but enough to confirm Dalton's suspicions weren't paranoia. He called me that evening. Not on the work phone, on my personal cell. How did you get this number? I asked. I have everyone's number, Miss Fields. How are you holding up? The question surprised me. Dalton Shaw wasn't known for personal concern. I'm fine. What? Because you're doing dangerous work. Imogen is smart. If she suspects you're observing her, she'll act. And Victor Cross doesn't hesitate to eliminate threats. You think they'd actually hurt me? I think corporate espionage at this level involves billions of dollars and strategic military contracts. People have been killed for much less. A pause. I'm having security upgraded on your apartment building. You'll also have a discreet protection detail starting Monday. That seems excessive. That seems prudent. You've photographed Imogen meeting with Cross's head of intelligence. You're now a direct threat to whatever operation they're running. His tone shifted, became somehow colder. I need you functional, Miss Fields. Which means I need you alive. Consider the security detail a professional investment. He hung up before I could respond. I sat in my expensive apartment, looking out at the Hudson River, and realized something unsettling. Dalton Shaw was protecting me not because he cared about me as a person, but because I was a useful asset. It should have bothered me more than it did. But somehow, in this strange world of corporate espionage and billion-dollar stakes, his cold pragmatism was almost comforting. He was honest about what I was to him, a tool for discovering truth, which was more honesty than Imogen provided with all her warm smiles and charitable work. Monday morning, I noticed the security detail. 2 professionals in a black sedan parked across from my building. They didn't try to hide. Dalton wanted me to know they were there. At the office, Imogen stopped by to invite me to lunch. I feel like we haven't had a chance to really connect, she said, her smile warm and genuine seeming. And if you're going to be managing Dalton's life, we should get to know each other better. Every instinct screamed that this was a trap. She'd noticed me. She was testing me. But refusing would be more suspicious than accepting. I'd love that, I said, matching her smile. Thank you. We went to a farm-to-table place in Tribeca, the kind of restaurant where every ingredient had a biography and the servers treated food like sacrament. Imogen was charming throughout. She asked about my life, my interests, my experience with Dalton so far. She shared stories about their relationship, about her foundation work, about her hopes for their future together. And I sat there, eating organic kale salad, listening to a woman I knew was lying about everything, and wondered if she could tell I was lying right back. You know, she said over coffee, Dalton doesn't trust easily. The fact that he hired you says something. I hope it says I'm competent. It says you're observant. He values that. She paused, her perfect smile never wavering. Just be careful, Arya. Dalton's world is complicated. Dangerous, even. People around him sometimes get caught in crossfire they never saw coming. It was said gently, almost maternally, but I heard the threat underneath. She knew. Maybe not exactly what I was doing, but she knew I was more than just an assistant. I appreciate the concern, I said carefully, but I'm tougher than I look. I'm sure you are. She touched my hand lightly, the same gesture she'd used at the Pantheon that first night. Just remember, in this world, loyalty is everything. And betrayal. She smiled, but her eyes were ice. Betrayal has consequences. We finished lunch. She paid. We parted with friendly smiles and professional warmth. And I went straight back to the office and wrote a memo to Dalton. Subject knows I'm observing her. Lunch conversation included veiled threat. Suggest adjusting operational security. His response, noted. Continue as planned. She's testing you. Don't break. That night, alone in my apartment with security parked outside, I realized something. This wasn't just about gathering evidence anymore. This was a game of chess being played by people who'd been training for this their entire lives. And I was a pawn who'd somehow ended up in the middle of the board, trying desperately not to get captured. The opportunity came 2 weeks later, during a weekend when Dalton was in Geneva for a tech summit and Imogen was supposedly visiting her sister in Connecticut. Dalton had given me explicit instructions. If she claims to be traveling and you have any doubt, verify. Don't confront. Just verify. I'd learned to trust my instincts about Imogen. When she said she was going to Connecticut, I heard, I'm going somewhere I don't want anyone to know about. The tracking app Dalton's security team had quietly installed on Imogen's phone, with legal authorization I didn't ask too many questions about, showed her in Manhattan. Specifically, in the Shaw Technologies building. On a Saturday, at 11 p.m., I made a decision that was either brave or catastrophically stupid. Probably both. I went to the office. Shaw Technologies' headquarters after hours was eerily beautiful. Emergency lighting cast long shadows across empty hallways. The hum of servers filled the silence. Security was minimal, a few guards making rounds, but mostly automated systems. My badge gave me access to most floors. Dalton had ensured that. What he hadn't explicitly authorized was me using that access to investigate his fiancée. But he'd told me to verify, so I was verifying. The tracking app showed Imogen on the 48th floor, executive offices. I took the elevator up, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it echo in the silence. The 48th floor was dark except for security lights. I moved quietly, following the layout I'd memorized from building schematics. Imogen's foundation maintained a small office suite here, officially for coordination with Shaw Technologies' charitable initiatives. Unofficially, I was about to find out. Light spilled from under her office door. I positioned myself around a corner, phone ready to document, and waited. 15 minutes later, Imogen emerged carrying a leather portfolio. She locked the office door and headed for the elevators. I waited until she was gone, then approached her office. The door was locked, but Dalton had provided me with an executive master key for emergencies. This qualified. I slipped inside and closed the door quietly behind me. The office was impeccably decorated, tasteful art, elegant furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. But I wasn't interested in aesthetics. I was interested in the computer that was still logged in. Imogen had been in a hurry. She'd closed programs, but hadn't logged out. A rookie mistake for a professional spy. Or maybe she'd been confident no one would check. I pulled out my phone and started photographing. Her email was open, dozens of messages to and from addresses I didn't recognize. I photographed the inbox, scanning for anything suspicious. One message caught my eye. Subject line, Thursday's package delivered successfully. The email was from an account labeled V in her contacts. The message was brief. Package received. Contents verified. Timeline accelerated. Next delivery Friday. Package. Contents. Delivery. The language of espionage dressed up as corporate speak. I photographed the entire exchange, my hands surprisingly steady despite the adrenaline flooding my system. Then I noticed a spreadsheet minimized in her taskbar. I opened it. Rows and rows of data. Dates. Financial transactions. Account numbers. And in the notes column, coded references, Chimera specs delivered, military protocol shared, beta timeline confirmed. This wasn't just casual information sharing. This was systematic intelligence gathering, documented with accountant-level precision. I photographed every page, my mind racing through implications. This spreadsheet alone would be enough to prosecute her for corporate espionage, maybe even for violations of national security, given the military AI contracts involved. I was about to close the spreadsheet when I noticed another file in the same folder, insurance.pdf. I opened it. It was a dossier on Dalton Shaw. Photos, financial records, personal history, and, most damning, a section titled Vulnerabilities and Pressure Points. The document listed everything someone would need to blackmail or manipulate Dalton, business dealings that skirted legal boundaries, personal relationships that could be leveraged, strategic weaknesses in Shaw Technologies operations. And at the bottom, a note in Imogen's handwriting. Use only if marriage plan fails. VX approved. VX, Victor Cross. I felt sick. This wasn't just corporate espionage. Imogen was building leverage. If Dalton ever discovered her betrayal and called off the wedding, she had a backup plan. Destroy him. I photographed the entire document, my hands shaking now, adrenaline shifting from excitement to fear. This was so much bigger than I'd imagined. Imogen wasn't just passing information to a competitor. She was orchestrating a long-term operation to either marry Dalton Shaw and gain permanent access to his company's secrets, or failing that, to destroy him entirely. I closed the files, logged out of the computer, and left the office as quietly as I'd entered. In the elevator descending to the lobby, I finally let myself feel the full weight of what I'd found. Evidence of systematic espionage. Financial documentation of intelligence sales. A blueprint for destroying one of the world's most powerful tech CEOs. And me, Aria Fields, former art student, accidental spy, in possession of all of it. I made it home, transferred all the photographs to the secure server Dalton's team had set up, and then sat on my couch shaking for 20 minutes. My phone rang. Dalton, calling from Geneva even though it was 6 a.m. there. I received your upload, he said without preamble. You went to her office. I verified her location. Like you asked, I asked you to verify, not to break into her office and photograph classified documents. You gave me a master key and told me to document everything. I documented everything. A pause. Then something that might have been a laugh. Or maybe just an exhale. You're either brilliant or suicidal, Miss Fields. Possibly both. Another pause. The spreadsheet is exactly what we needed. The insurance file is concerning. She's been planning for contingencies. What do we do now? Now? We prepare. We have proof of espionage, but we need to catch her in the act of transferring information. We need to connect her directly to Victor Cross in a way that's legally actionable. What you've found is invaluable, but it's not quite enough for prosecution. How much more do you need? One more piece. A recording of her actually passing classified information. Something undeniable. And how do we get that? We wait for the next delivery. According to that email, she's scheduled for Friday. We document the transfer. We record the conversation. We build a case that destroys her credibility completely. His voice was cold, calculating, absolutely without mercy. You're going to let her hang herself, I said. No, Miss Fields. We're going to give her enough rope. She'll hang herself. A pause. Can you handle one more surveillance operation? I thought about my mother's medical bills, now covered. About the apartment overlooking the Hudson. About the chance to actually matter in a world that had spent my entire life telling me I was invisible. Yes, I said. I can handle it. Good. Rest this weekend. On Monday, we set the trap. He hung up. I sat in my apartment, looking out at the city lights, and wondered when exactly I'd become the kind of person who broke into offices and photographed espionage evidence. Somewhere between poverty and pragmatism, I supposed. Somewhere between invisibility and survival. The week before the planned surveillance operation felt like living inside a pressure cooker set to maximum heat. Every interaction with Imogen became a performance within a performance. I managed Dalton's schedule while watching his fiancée plot his destruction. She smiled at me over morning coffee while I cataloged evidence of her betrayal. We discussed wedding arrangements while I documented her meetings with Victor Cross's operatives. It was exhausting. Tuesday afternoon, Jasper Kane called me into his office, not the conference room, but his actual workspace. This was significant. Conference rooms were for formal business. Personal offices were for sensitive conversations. Close the door, he said. I did. You've impressed Mr. Shaw? That's not easy. Jasper leaned back in his chair, studying me with those careful eyes that missed nothing. But I need to make something clear. What you're doing is dangerous. Not just physically, legally. I'm aware. Are you? Because breaking into Imogen Reed's office could be construed as corporate espionage. The same crime we're accusing her of committing. I had authorization from the CEO. Verbal authorization in an undocumented conversation. If this goes sideways, Mr. Shaw could claim ignorance. You'd be the lone actor. The overzealous employee who exceeded her authority. I felt cold. He wouldn't do that. Wouldn't he? Dalton Shaw has built an empire by making ruthless calculations. If protecting you threatens Shaw Technologies, he'll sacrifice you without hesitation. Jasper leaned forward. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying it to make sure you understand the stakes. You're playing in a game where loyalty is conditional and self-preservation is paramount. Then why are you warning me? Because despite my initial skepticism, I've come to respect what you're doing. You saw something wrong and reported it. That takes integrity. But integrity doesn't pay legal bills or prevent prison time. He slid a business card across the desk. My personal lawyer. If anything happens, if this operation goes wrong, if you're accused of wrongdoing, call this number immediately. Not Dalton. Not Shaw Technologies' legal team. This lawyer. I took the card, my hand trembling slightly. You think it's going to go wrong. I think espionage operations have a tendency to spiral beyond control. And I think you should have protection independent of Mr. Shaw's interests. Why are you helping me? He smiled. A genuine smile, not his usual professional mask. Because someone should. And because if this succeeds, you'll have proven yourself invaluable. I prefer to invest in valuable people. I left his office with the business card in my pocket and a new understanding of how power worked in this world. Everyone was calculating angles, building leverage, protecting themselves. Trust was a commodity. Loyalty was conditional. and survival meant always having a backup plan. It should have been depressing. Instead, it was clarifying. Wednesday evening, Imogen invited me to a Luminance Foundation board meeting to see how we operate, maybe learn something applicable to managing Dalton's schedule. The meeting was held in the Foundation's Midtown offices, elegant but not ostentatious, designed to project compassion rather than wealth. 12 board members discussed arts education funding, reviewed grant applications, debated program effectiveness. Imogen was masterful. She guided discussions with subtle precision, acknowledged dissenting opinions while steering toward her preferred outcomes, balanced fiscal responsibility with idealistic ambition. Watching her, I could see why Dalton had believed in her, why everyone believed in her. She was genuinely brilliant, genuinely passionate about arts education, genuinely capable of making a difference, which made her betrayal somehow worse. After the meeting, she pulled me aside. "What did you think?" "It was impressive. You've built something meaningful." "We've built something meaningful," she corrected. "The board, the staff, our donors. I'm just the facilitator." She paused, her perfect features showing what looked like genuine vulnerability. "Can I ask you something, Arya?" Off the record, every alarm bell in my head started ringing. "Of course. Do you think Dalton is happy?" "Truly happy." The question surprised me. I'm not sure that's something I can answer. He trusts you, more than he trusts most people. I see how he listens when you speak, how he considers your input." She looked out the window at the Manhattan skyline. "He's so guarded, so controlled. Sometimes I wonder if he's capable of actual happiness, or if he just simulates emotions he thinks are appropriate." It was such an intimate, vulnerable confession that for a moment I forgot she was lying about everything. "I think Mr. Shaw cares deeply about the things that matter to him," I said carefully. "Including you." She smiled, but there was sadness in it. "Does he? Or does he care about what I represent? The perfect partner, the appropriate companion for a man of his status." She shook her head. "I'm sorry. You don't need to hear this. Wedding planning makes you philosophical, I suppose. It's understandable. You're kind, Arya. Don't let this world make you cynical." She touched my arm, that same calculated gesture of intimacy. People like Dalton, people with that much power and wealth, they can afford to be cold. But people like us, we have to stay human. She left, and I stood there trying to parse what had just happened. Was it manipulation? Probably. Imogen was testing my loyalty, probing for weaknesses in my relationship with Dalton. But there had been something genuine in her voice, some real loneliness beneath the performance. Or maybe I was falling for exactly the kind of emotional manipulation that made her dangerous. I reported the conversation to Dalton that evening via secure message. Subject attempted to gauge my loyalty and your emotional state. Possible intelligence gathering or genuine doubt about relationship. Recommend caution. His response: "Everything Imogen does is calculated. Don't mistake performance for authenticity." Friday's operation proceeds as planned. Thursday, the pressure increased. Dalton's security team briefed me on Friday's surveillance operation. I would be attending a gala with Dalton and Imogen, the annual Tech Philanthropy Summit. During a scheduled break, Imogen had a meeting with Foundation contacts that, according to intelligence, would actually be Marcus Verne from V-Cross Industries. My job: wear a recording device, position myself to capture audio of the meeting, document any transfer of information. What if she catches me? I asked the security chief, a former FBI agent named Rodriguez. She won't. The device is completely undetectable, built into a pendant that looks like jewelry. He showed me the necklace, elegant, understated, completely innocent seeming. And if something goes wrong, then you abort, claim you were confused about the meeting location, and get out. We'll have agents positioned throughout the venue for extraction if necessary. Extraction. That's a military term. This is a military operation, Miss Fields. Corporate espionage involving defense contracts is national security. We're not just protecting Shaw Technologies. We're protecting classified military intelligence. The weight of that settled on my shoulders. This wasn't just about Dalton's company anymore. This was about national security, military protocols, technology that could affect battlefield outcomes. And me, a former art student who'd been serving champagne 6 weeks ago, in the middle of it all. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about Imogen's question, "Do you think Dalton is happy?" And about Dalton's cold response, Don't mistake performance for authenticity. Both of them performing. Both of them lying. Both of them using me as a piece in whatever game they were playing. And me, lying to everyone while trying to figure out where performance ended and truth began. Friday morning, Dalton called me into his office. Are you ready? As ready as I'll ever be. He studied me with those winter storm eyes. You understand that after tonight, everything changes. Either we'll have proof and Imogen will be arrested, or the operation will fail and you'll be compromised. I understand. If you want to back out, now is the time. No judgment. No consequences. I thought about my mother. About the medical bills that were finally paid. About the apartment overlooking the Hudson. About 6 months of working at the Pantheon, invisible and forgotten. I'm not backing out. Something shifted in his expression. Not warmth. Dalton Shaw didn't do warmth. But something like respect. Then let's finish this. The Tech Philanthropy Summit was held at the Plaza Hotel, because when billionaires gathered to celebrate their charitable generosity, they did it with maximum opulence. The grand ballroom glittered with Swarovski crystal chandeliers. A who's who of Silicon Valley mingled over champagne and canapes, discussing innovation and impact while servers, people I'd worked alongside just weeks ago, moved invisibly through the crowd. I wore an emerald gown that Dalton's stylist had selected, the recording pendant resting against my collarbone like innocuous jewelry. Every breath felt monitored. Every movement seemed suspicious. Relax, Dalton murmured as we entered. You look like you're about to detonate. I'm wearing a wire to spy on your fiancé. Relaxation isn't really an option. Then fake it. You're good at playing roles. Imogen joined us, radiant in champagne silk, her smile bright enough to power the chandeliers. Darling. And Arya, you look stunning. That color is perfect on you. Thank you, I managed. The event proceeded with choreographed precision. Speeches about technology's potential to solve global problems. Awards for philanthropic achievement. Networking that was really about power consolidation and deal-making disguised as compassion. Imogen worked the room brilliantly, introducing Dalton to potential partners, facilitating connections, playing the role of perfect partner with such conviction that I wondered if she'd forgotten it was a role. At 8:47 p.m., she excused herself. Foundation emergency. The venue for next month's gala has double booked. I need to make some calls. Dalton nodded, distracted by a conversation with a venture capital CEO. I waited 30 seconds, then followed. The recording pendant was activated. Rodriguez had positioned agents throughout the hotel. Everything was ready. I tracked Imogen to a private conference room on the second floor, room 212, exactly where intelligence had predicted. Through the door's small window, I could see her sitting across from Marcus Fern. I positioned myself in an alcove adjacent to the room, close enough for the pendant to capture audio, far enough to maintain plausible deniability if caught. The recording device transmitted to Rodriguez's team in real time, but I could also hear through a tiny earpiece disguised as an earring. Imogen's voice came through clearly. Timeline accelerated. Chimera beta testing begins in 2 weeks. Marcus Vern's response. Cross is very pleased. The military protocols alone are worth millions. When can you access the final specifications? After the wedding. Once I'm officially family, security clearance becomes automatic. Dalton trusts me completely. A pause. Then Vern. And if he discovers the truth? He won't. I've been careful. The only risk was that server from the Pantheon, but Shaw eliminated her. My blood turned to ice. She meant me. Except she didn't know I'd been hired, not eliminated. Imogen continued. Once we're married, I'll have complete access. Every project, every protocol, every classified development. Cross will dominate military AI for the next decade. And Shaw will discover he married a woman who destroyed his empire from the inside. Poetic, really. He's so arrogant. So certain of his superiority. It will be satisfying to watch him fall. The venom in her voice was shocking. This wasn't just business. This was personal. Vern laughed. You've played your part brilliantly. The perfect philanthropist. The devoted fiancé. It's not difficult. Rich men are predictable. Give them beauty, admiration, and the illusion of emotional connection, and they'll give you everything. I heard papers shuffling. These are the latest Chimera specifications? Encrypted on this drive. Cross has the decryption key. Excellent. Your final payment will be transferred upon successful delivery. $3 million, as agreed. $3 million. Imogen had sold out Dalton, Shaw Technologies, and military intelligence for $3 million. The meeting concluded. I retreated quickly, my heart hammering, making it back to the ballroom before Imogen emerged. Rodriguez's voice came through the earpiece. Recording confirmed. Evidence is solid. Legal team says it's prosecutable. We have her. I found Dalton talking with a senator. He glanced at me, read my expression, and smoothly excused himself. The ballroom terrace, he murmured. 3 minutes. I made my way outside, the cold November air shocking after the ballroom's warmth. Dalton appeared moments later. Well, it's done. She confessed everything. The recording is clear. He pulled out his phone, listening to the audio file Rodriguez had already uploaded. His expression didn't change. That absolute control never wavered. But I saw his jaw tighten, saw his fingers grip the phone with just slightly too much pressure. $3 million, he said quietly. I would have given her $3 billion if she'd asked. If she'd been honest about needing money, wanting wealth, anything, I would have helped her. This wasn't about money. Not really. No, it was about destroying me. She actually hates me. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something vulnerable in his expression. I chose wrong. I thought I'd found someone genuine. But she was performing from the start. I'm sorry. Don't be. You saw what I missed. You trusted your instincts when I ignored mine. He straightened, the vulnerability disappearing behind his mask of control. Rodriguez is coordinating with FBI and corporate security. Imogen will be arrested within the hour. Victor Cross's offices are being raided simultaneously. This instant. What happens to her? Federal prosecution. Corporate espionage. Theft of classified information. Conspiracy. She'll spend the next decade in federal prison, minimum. The word should have felt like victory. Instead, I felt hollow. She seemed so real, I said. So genuine. The best lies always do. He turned to go back inside, then paused. Thank you, Miss Fields. You saved my company. Possibly my life. You're welcome. He left me alone on the terrace, and I stood there watching the Manhattan skyline, trying to process everything that had just happened. I'd done it. I'd gathered the evidence. I'd helped catch a corporate spy. But I couldn't shake the memory of Imogen's question. Do you think Dalton is happy? Or her voice on the recording, full of genuine hatred. It will be satisfying to watch him fall. How much of her had been performance? How much had been real? And how much of myself had I performed while investigating her? The arrest didn't happen at the gala. Dalton was strategic even in justice. Arresting Imogen at a major public event would create scandal, damage Shaw Technologies' reputation, and possibly compromise the federal investigation into Victor Cross. Instead, we maintained the performance for 2 more weeks. The most excruciating 2 weeks of my life. Imogen continued planning the wedding. Dalton continued playing the attentive fiancé. I continued managing schedules and taking notes while knowing that FBI agents were building an airtight case. The recordings I'd captured had been invaluable, but prosecutors wanted more. They wanted financial records, communication logs, a complete network analysis of everyone involved in the espionage operation. So I kept watching, kept documenting, kept pretending everything was normal while the walls closed in. Imogen seemed to sense something was wrong. She became more careful, more guarded. Twice, I caught her watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. You're very good at your job, she said one afternoon, catching me organizing Dalton's calendar. Too good, maybe. I'm thorough. Mr. Shaw appreciates thoroughness. Does he? Or does he appreciate control? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Be careful, Arya. People who get too close to Dalton tend to get burned. I'll keep that in mind. The planned event for the takedown was the Luminance Foundation's annual Winter Gala, Imogen's signature charity event, broadcast live on PBS, attended by celebrities, politicians, and the tech elite. 1,000 guests. $15 million raised for arts education, and 1 carefully orchestrated public exposure. Dalton's plan was ruthless in its elegance. Let Imogen have her moment of triumph. Let her shine in front of everyone who admired her. Then destroy her where the humiliation would be absolute. I'd argued against it. This seems cruel. Cruel would be letting her continue operating, Dalton countered. She's been stealing classified military intelligence. She's put lives at risk. A little public humiliation is mercy compared to what she deserves. The gala was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Because Imogen had a flair for dramatic venues. The Temple of Dinder provided a backdrop of ancient Egyptian grandeur. Ice sculptures depicted classical art masterpieces. A string quartet played Bach. Imogen wore white, symbolizing purity, innocence, all the things she wasn't. She glowed under the spotlight, delivering a speech about art's power to transform lives. I stood in the wings with Dalton, watching her perform. She's good, I murmured. She's always been good, Dalton replied. That's why I believed her. At precisely 8:30 p.m., during Imogen's closing remarks, Dalton walked onto the stage. The crowd applauded. They assumed he was joining his fiancée for some romantic moment. Maybe an early wedding announcement. Instead, he walked to the podium microphone. Good evening. I apologize for the interruption, but I have something important to share. Imogen's smile froze. Just for a second. But I saw it. Dalton pulled out a small remote control. The gala's massive projection screens, installed to display images of the Foundation's work, came to life. With the recording of Imogen and Marcus Fern, her voice filled the museum. Once we're married, I'll have complete access. Every project, every protocol, every classified development. Vern's response. Cross will dominate military AI for the next decade. Imogen's face drained of color. She looked at Dalton with an expression of pure betrayal. You recorded me? You were stealing classified information. His voice was cold, factual. This recording, along with substantial additional evidence, has been provided to federal investigators. FBI agents are currently executing search warrants at V-Cross Industries. You're under arrest for corporate espionage, theft of classified information, and conspiracy. 2 FBI agents materialized from the wings. The crowd sat in stunned silence. Imogen's perfect mask shattered. You bastard. You arrogant, controlling bastard. You think you're so superior, so untouchable. I hope they destroy you. I hope Victor takes everything you've built and burns it to the ground. He won't. Dalton's tone never changed. Because you failed. You got caught. And now you'll spend the next decade in federal prison thinking about how you underestimated a server with an art history degree. He looked directly at me then. The crowd followed his gaze. Imogen's eyes widened as recognition dawned. You, the girl from the Pantheon. You were working for him this whole time. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. The FBI agents escorted her out, her white gown trailing behind her like a wedding dress in reverse. The crowd erupted in chaos, reporters calling questions, guests pulling out phones, the carefully orchestrated evening dissolving into scandal. Dalton returned to the podium, his expression calm. I apologize for disrupting this important event. The Luminance Foundation's work will continue under new leadership. Your donations this evening will still fund arts education for students who need it. He paused. Sometimes the greatest art is recognizing truth beneath performance. Thank you for your understanding. He walked off stage, found me in the wings, and said simply, it's done. The media frenzy lasted for weeks. Tech billionaire catches fiancé in espionage ring dominated headlines. Imogen's perfect image crumbled as investigators revealed the full scope of her operation. 3 years of systematic intelligence theft, connections to foreign governments, a network of corporate spies across Silicon Valley. Victor Cross was arrested simultaneously. His company faced federal charges, stockholder lawsuits, and complete reputation destruction. Within a month, V-Cross Industries filed for bankruptcy. I watched it all from Dalton's office, my new permanent workspace as his chief of staff, feeling simultaneously vindicated and hollowed out. You're quiet, Dalton observed one evening as we reviewed the day's developments. I'm processing. Processing what? The fact that I helped destroy someone's life. You helped stop a criminal enterprise. Imogen made her choices. Did she though? Or was she desperate? Trapped? Maybe Victor Cross had leverage we don't know about. Dalton looked at me with something like surprise. You're defending her. I'm trying to understand her. There's a difference. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. This is why I hired you, MS. Fields. You see complexity where others see binary choices. You recognize that even villains are human. Is that valuable in your world? Immensely. Most people in my position are surrounded by sycophants who tell them what they want to hear. You tell me what I need to hear. He paused. The prosecutors offered Imogen a plea deal. 15 years instead of 30 if she cooperates fully. She refused. Why? Pride. She told them she wouldn't help the man who publicly humiliated her. He shook his head. Even facing 30 years in federal prison, she chooses revenge over pragmatism. Maybe revenge is all she has left. Maybe. Or maybe she's exactly what she appeared to be. A brilliant woman who chose the wrong path and won't admit she failed. I thought about that later, alone in my apartment. About choices and consequences. About the paths we choose and the people we become. My mother called that evening. I saw the news, sweetheart. Are you all right? I'm fine, Mom. That woman, Imogen Reed. She seemed so nice. So genuine. She was good at seeming. Are you safe? Working for Mr. Shaw? I looked out at the Hudson River, at the city lights reflecting on the water. Yeah, Mom. I'm safe. Actually, I think I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. After we hung up, I received a message from Jasper Kane. Congratulations on the successful operation. You've proven yourself invaluable. Drinks sometime to celebrate. And one from Rodriguez, the security chief. Outstanding work, Fields. If you ever want to transition to corporate security, we'd be lucky to have you. And finally, one from Dalton. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. My office. We need to discuss your future. I didn't sleep well that night. Tomorrow felt like an ending. Or maybe a beginning. Possibly both. Dalton's office at 10 a.m. was flooded with morning light. He sat behind his desk, not the intimidating power position, but in one of the chairs by the window, more casual than I'd ever seen him. Sit, he said. I sat. I owe you an apology. The word surprised me. Dalton Shaw didn't apologize. For what? For having you fired from the Pantheon. For testing you that way. For putting you in danger without fully explaining the risks. He looked directly at me. I manipulated you. I used your desperation and your integrity to serve my purposes. That was wrong. I didn't know what to say. This vulnerability was so unexpected that I felt like I was seeing a different person. You also paid my mother's medical bills, I said finally. You gave me opportunities one never would have had. You trusted me with important work. True. But that doesn't excuse the manipulation. He paused. You saved my company, Miss Fields. Possibly my life. Imogen's insurance filed detailed plans that went beyond corporate espionage. If I'd married her, she would have eventually arranged my death, an accident that would give her control of my estate and Shaw Technologies. The casual way he said it made my blood run cold. She was going to kill you? Eventually. According to the files FBI recovered, yes. Murder disguised as accident, probably within 2 years of marriage. He smiled without humor. So thank you for preventing that. You're welcome, I think. I'm offering you a permanent position, not as private assistant, as Chief Vigilance Officer. That's not a real title. It is now. You'd be responsible for internal security, risk assessment, threat analysis. Essentially, you'd be my early warning system. The person who spots the things I miss. Because I saw what others didn't with Imogen. Because you have a gift for seeing beneath surfaces. For recognizing when something doesn't belong. He leaned forward. I need someone who can't be bought, can't be manipulated. Someone whose loyalty is to truth rather than power. What makes you think that's me? Because you turned down 2 months severance to maintain your integrity. Because you risked your life to expose corruption. Because you still have the capacity to sympathize with Imogen even after everything she did. He paused. Most people in my world lose that. They become pragmatic to the point of sociopathy. You haven't. Yet. Yet, he agreed. Which is why the position includes mandatory counseling, regular ethics reviews, and the freedom to decline assignments you find morally objectionable. Seriously? Seriously. I need you functional, Miss Fields. Burnout and moral compromise would make you useless. He slid a contract across the table. $300,000 annually. Full benefits. Equity stake in Shaw Technologies. And one other thing. He pulled out a check. Made out to me. For $500,000. What is this? Retroactive bonus for the Imogen operation. You earned it. I stared at the check, my hands shaking. $500,000. More money than I'd ever imagined having. I can't accept this. You can. And you will. Because you've earned financial security, Miss Fields. You shouldn't have to worry about medical bills or rent or whether you can afford to eat something other than ramen. This feels like buying my silence. This is compensation for extraordinary work performed under dangerous conditions. If I wanted to buy your silence, I'd have offered 10 times this amount and threatened you with legal action. He smiled slightly. I'm learning that you respond better to respect than coercion. I picked up the contract, reading through the details. Everything was as he'd described. The title, the salary, the responsibilities. What happened to I don't do sentiment? I asked. I don't. This is pragmatism. You're the best investment I've made in years. He stood, extending his hand. Do we have a deal, Chief Vigilance Officer Fields? I thought about my mother, about the apartment, about the chance to build something meaningful instead of just surviving. I shook his hand. We have a deal. 6 months later, I sat in a conference room with Dalton and the Shaw Technologies board, presenting my first major threat assessment. 3 potential security vulnerabilities, I explained, pulling up slides. First, our partnership with Meridian Systems includes a senior executive with undisclosed financial connections to foreign tech firms. Recommend deeper vetting. Second, our quantum computing division has 2 researchers with gambling debts exceeding 6 figures. Potential blackmail risks. Third, the new head of marketing's social media accounts show political affiliations that could create regulatory complications for our defense contracts. The board members listened with varying degrees of attention. One, a venture capitalist who'd always seemed skeptical of my position, interrupted. Ms. Fields, aren't you being somewhat paranoid? These seem like minor concerns. Minor concerns accumulate into major vulnerabilities, I replied. Imogen Reed seemed like a minor concern until she stole classified information worth billions. That silenced the room. Dalton smiled slightly. Thank you, Arya. The board will review your recommendations. Your threat assessment reports have been invaluable. After the meeting, we walked back to his office together. You're getting better at corporate speak, he observed. I'm learning to translate observational insights into business language. Don't lose the observational part. That's what makes you valuable. We developed an easy partnership over the past 6 months. Not friendship. Dalton Shaw didn't do friendship, but something like mutual respect built on absolute honesty. He trusted me to tell him truths no one else would. I trusted him to take those truths seriously. Have you heard the latest about Imogen? I asked. She's appealing her sentence. Unlikely to succeed. Do you ever think about her? Occasionally. Usually with relief that I discovered the truth before marrying her. He paused at his office door. Do you? Sometimes. I wonder who she could have been if she'd made different choices. That's the difference between us, Arya. You wonder about alternate possibilities. I deal with actual realities. Someone has to wonder. Otherwise we lose empathy entirely. True. He smiled. One of the rare genuine smiles I'd learned to recognize. Which is why you're here. To remind me that patterns of behavior don't erase humanity. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Lunch this weekend? I want to hear about your new project. I'd been able to bring her to New York, set her up in a nice apartment near mine, ensure she had the best medical care available. She was thriving in ways I'd never imagined possible. Everything all right? Dalton asked. Yeah, everything's good. Good. Because I need your threat assessment on the Singapore expansion by Friday. You'll have it Thursday. He nodded and disappeared into his office, leaving me in the hallway of one of the world's most powerful tech companies, where I'd somehow become an indispensable part of the machinery. A year ago, I'd been serving champagne to people who never saw me. Now I was the person they couldn't afford not to see. Epilogue, Chief Vigilance Officer. The Manhattan skyline at sunset was particularly beautiful from the 55th floor of the Obsidian Tower. I stood at my office window, my own office, with my name on the door and my title etched in brushed steel, watching the city transition from day to night. My phone rang. Dalton, even though he was just 3 offices down the hall. Arya. Media inquiry about the Imogen situation. They're doing a retrospective. Want to comment? What are they asking? How it felt to be the server who caught a corporate spy. I smiled. Tell them I was just observing. Same thing I do now, just with better pay. Perfect. That's the quote I'll use. He hung up. I returned to the threat assessment I was preparing, thinking about the strange journey from the Pantheon to here. About how observation and integrity had transformed invisibility into influence. My mother called. Sweetheart, I'm looking at apartments near Central Park. Is that insane? Mom, you can afford it. Stop feeling guilty about accepting help. I'm not used to this. To not worrying about money. Get used to it. You've earned the right to live well. After we hung up, I sat there in my office, looking at the city I'd once felt excluded from, and thought about Imogen's question one more time. Do you think Dalton is happy? I still didn't know the answer, but I knew I was happy. Or at least, I was building towards something that looked like happiness. Meaningful work, financial security, the ability to help my mother, respect from colleagues, and the strange satisfaction of using my gifts in service of truth. Not bad for a fired waitress with an art history degree. The door opened. Dalton, carrying 2 glasses of scotch. Celebrating something? I asked. Your 1-year anniversary. You've been Chief Vigilance Officer for exactly 12 months. He handed me a glass. We touched them together gently. To observation, he said. To honesty, I replied. We drank, and for a moment, the usual distance between us closed just slightly. Thank you, Arya, he said quietly. For seeing what I couldn't. For being incorruptible in a world that rewards corruption. For reminding me that integrity still matters. Thank you for trusting me. Despite everything. He smiled, that rare genuine smile, and returned to his office. I stood at the window, glass in hand, watching the sun set over Manhattan. Somewhere in a federal prison, Imogen Reed was serving her sentence, probably still believing she'd been right to pursue revenge over pragmatism. Somewhere in the city below, servers at exclusive clubs were working doubles to keep their heads above water, invisible to the people they served. And here I was, in a corner office at Shaw Technologies, proof that sometimes observation and integrity could transform everything. The art history degree had been useful after all, just not in the way I'd expected.